on behalf of the Institute for Leadership and Strategic Foresight. Welcome to So You Want to Be the Chief, a podcast for leaders.
Well, I am so honored today to have one of I call him a protege. We haven't seen each other in decades. No, not decades, but years. He is Chief Master Sergeant James Pope. And we were together at the Air Force Academy. He was an AMT for a couple of years, and great. Him and his wife Gina were great people. I still love them. They've got one kid that I don't know how. I'm not. Is he spoiled or what, Chief?
All kids are spoiled, aren't they?
I make sure mine are. But anyway, good to see you, Chief. It's and I've said this a few times, and this is the truth. You hang with the chief, that would be me, and you get promoted. You were a master sergeant at USAFA. We hung out a little bit. You went off, and eventually you became the top 1%. So I don't know that I ever congratulate. Well, I did, because I saw you at Shepherd, I think, as a first sergeant, and you coined me those. I have them all over the place, but I know I have your coin somewhere. But thanks for being on the show, and thanks for what you do, and good to see you again.
Right back at you. I appreciate it.
Now, what do you do now? I know, again, you were an AMT and you were a first sergeant. What is your AFSC to begin with?
So I started out as an HVAC technician, so I'm a CE by background. Of course, I went and did the AMT thing, and then I followed that with first sergeant duty, and then back into the career field. Currently, I'm the MSG chief at JVA at Andrews, and currently the acting command chief for about 4 to 5 months, with filling a gap as I wait to retire out of the Air Force. So.
Okay, so and when you retire, how many will that be? Is that 30?
I'll be at 30 years, yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, and I assume it's been pretty good, because you smile a lot.
I do. Well, there's.
Well, and being a command chief is a big responsibility, but I think there's some fun that comes with it, isn't there?
Oh, every day I get to talk to airmen that I consider fun. Having an impact or listening to their stories. And maybe being part of their story is what I look forward to every day.
Well, the topic that we're talking about today is lesson 11, and that's think backward. And actually, I couldn't use the title because of a copyright issue, but I studied with Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I referred to that book in my book, and he taught me about to begin with the end in mind. The lesson is think backward, but really it's about beginning with the end in mind. And I know we've had these conversations that we did way back at USAFA, because you remember I called them all shining stars. Now, believe it or not, I got crap from people, some people, about that. You're boosting their ego and all that stuff. Well, you know what? I think it takes a strong ego to succeed at what we warriors do. Not a big one. There's a difference. The people with the big ego go around telling everybody they're great. The people with the strong ego don't have to tell anybody anything. They just go do the job. And I always, remember the term dirtbag. I don't know if that's still in our vocabulary, but I always told people, if you think of them as dirtbags, they're going to live up to that. If you think of them as shining stars, they're going to live up to that. What are your thoughts on that, Chief?
Yeah, 100% agree. Negative attitudes breed negative attitudes, or negative work, so to speak. I think your personal story with the cadet and the Falconeers was a really good example of that. But yeah, you said it in your book. If you call them kids, they're going to be kids. We're not talking about kids, though, right? We're talking about defenders of the Constitution of the United States and what we hold dear to. I wouldn't have a kid working on a multi-million-dollar jet. I think you've referenced that, and I couldn't agree more. It's we have to treat them. It's almost like we're not treating them with respect when we do that. Like we're looking down on them. And so if we're gonna, want respect in return, we're gonna have to give it. So definitely, that's kind of how that goes.
And they understand. They pick up on that pretty quickly. And I don't know. I don't remember when we were together at USAFA, but I just retired a couple of years ago from there, and I still go back and I'm a SPE, Squadron Professional Ethics Advisor for Squadron 40. So I go back and as much as I can, really, because I love being around them. And a lot of times, especially the new lieutenants who are hanging out there waiting for an assignment or whatever, I call them sir, and most of the time they say, Chief, you don't have to call me sir. You know, you knew me as George just 3 weeks ago. No, sir, you got lieutenant bars on. I may be retired, and yeah, I'm twice your age at least, but I still have to be respectful. I need to to call you sir, because that's part of that vision that I have, that you are, and you went to Vector several times. A lot of times I tell them, you know, one day you're going to be a colonel. One day you may be a general. I hope you won't remember my name, but I hope you give me some props for helping you. But if you respect them, they'll respect you back, won't they?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And you know, my time at USAFA, for instance, I recall when we used to teach the PME to the cadets, and you know, of course, that wasn't their, you know, favorite subject to go to, military studies, basically. And it was all the basic stuff. And looking back, I kind of giggle about it, because I remember this. It would have been a junior, and he said, "Sergeant Pope, why are we learning this? Why does this matter? This is, you know, it's not that important." And of course I always used to go back and say, "Hey, you know, this is why it's important. It's important because even as a lieutenant, an airman's going to come up to you and they're going to expect you to know this stuff, because you're a leader, and in their eyes, you know, a lieutenant, you know, maybe like God, you know, to them, you know, it's an officer, and quite honestly, as a chief looking at them, I expect them to know it, you know, basic stuff, right? I expect them to make mistakes. I expect them to learn from those mistakes, and I should help control those mistakes, so that they grow, for sure. I teach. I go and talk to ALS classes and first term airman centers all the time, and I tell the same story. And I think it's something I learned when I was doing Vector with you. But I give an example, and I take a pencil and I hold it out, and I call out the most physically fit person in the room. I let them pick who that is, and they come up, and I have them jump over the pencil. I put it pretty low to the ground, and I say, "Hey, jump over this pencil," and they jump over it. So, okay, I'm going to lift it up a little higher. I want you to jump over it again. They jump over it, and I go on till I get to a certain height, and then it's like really at their limit, but they get over it just barely. And I say, "Okay, why didn't you jump that high the first time?" And they said, "Well, the pencil was close to the floor." I said, "So my expectations were low. They were on the ground." But so you got to look at it from two perspectives, right? So from a leader, I need to control the expectation. I need to be able to set it. I need to know you to be able to set it, right? Because I don't want to leave it at the ground, because you're not going to grow. But as the person jumping over the pencil, meeting that expectation is, to the FTech students, I always say, jump as high as you possibly can every time, and push yourself, because you're never going to get better. And I think it kind of goes back to, you know, all this stuff ties in together, because when you're looking backwards, it starts with one, goal setting. So what am I trying to achieve, and how am I going to get there? And really, you know, you laid it out perfectly, in your book and in your examples on how we do that. You know, it's almost like reverse outlining something. You know,
Yeah,
like you're gonna, you know, you can't write a paper without making an outline. And that's kind of how I envisioned it in my head, so to speak. So,
well, and you know, Chief, I don't know that everybody's a youngster to me anymore. So I could almost legally call everyone kids, because everyone is twice younger than I am. But especially youngsters and even kids, lately I'm reading in on social media about people not knowing their identity. In fact, I'm going to write a book by the end of the year about how to discover your identity, because I think you already have it. You just don't know where it is, and you got to go back and do the work. And really, it's based on what I used to teach at Vector, interestingly enough. But for some reason, and I don't know, maybe it's some real, no kidding, scholars can figure it out. But for some reason, lately in the last few years, people don't have a vision for success. I mean, I don't remember having conversations with you about being a chief, but when I saw you as a first sergeant at Shepherd, you were a senior, I think, maybe, right?
Master.
Yeah. So, and I say this, and people don't believe me, but I've seen people, most of them have become proteges, who I can immediately say that's a chief. They don't have the stripes yet, but that's a chief. And you can spot it. You can, they have this aura around them, and they have this vision. I think that's what it is, a vision of success. Yeah, I'm a chief. I just haven't gotten there yet. And I'll tell you what, and I didn't write this in a book. I'm going to revise the book. I'm going to update it soon. But I remember as a tech sergeant, Chief Master Sergeant John Sterl bringing me into his office and telling me, announcing, I guess, threatening me that I was going to the NCO Academy. I don't think so, Chief. I was a fast burner. I mean, I was making rank the first time, and it was going to be that way till I made senior at least. And I said, Chief, I don't want to go. I'm not going. He said, No, Bob, you are going. No, Chief, you didn't understand. You didn't hear me. I'm not going. Bob, you are going. I did go. The chief won. And when I came back, and I did well, and sitting down, afterwards, I said, well, why did you make me do that? I didn't need it. I was going to make rank anyway, although it did change my life. It really did. But he said, because you're a chief. I said, look at my stripes. I'm a tech sergeant. I'm not a chief. He said, no, you're a chief. You just don't have the stripes yet. So he had already envisioned me as a chief way before it ever happened, And I think that's a valuable thing for us as chiefs to do, isn't it? To see everyone, because we don't know what's next. You remember seeing the cadets get off. Well, they weren't even cadets yet, getting off the bus over to the footprints. Plenty of days, man, I'd see those youngsters and I'd say, no way, this will never be a lieutenant. You remember those days. There's just no way this person is ever going to make it through this place. But they did. And some of them still, I stay in touch with them. That's a great thing about social media. And a lot of them are becoming lieutenant colonels now, Chief, believe it or not. You're going to say, no way, you're not even that old, Chief. I am. Evidently, I am. But anyway, that's the power of this looking backwards. See them in a positive way. See them as successful. See them as generals. And they'll live up to that, at least in our little world when they're with us. They'll live up to that.
Yeah, 100%. I caught two things there. See their potential. And to do that as chiefs, well, everybody in the Air Force these days likes to think that we're doing too much with not enough. Look, the mission is always going to be the mission. But if a chief doesn't get out from behind their desk and interact with their folks, you're never going to know their potential, because you're not going to know the airmen. So the challenge I would say to new chiefs is, don't sit in your office. Put on your calendar admin time and stick that admin time and stick to the admin time. And then put on your calendar that you're going to go out to Shop X or whatever and go grab a tool bag with the airmen and go out, work on a jet or whatever it is that you do. And know them just like you're their supervisor, because you're not going to know their potential. Yeah, you can hear a supervisor tell you all day long what they're doing, but are you going to really know them? Because you kind of talked about a little bit, it seems like they don't know their purpose, and we could go into the politics of that, of where they're from, how many parents they have, and all those things that are going on in society today. But once they're in the Air Force, they're your family, and you have to grow them. You have to pull out the good things and push them hard. So, yeah.
I don't know that I hope that I'm wrong, Chief, but my sense is that we don't do that much anymore. That Chief Sterl, the day that we got to Chanute Air Force Base, I don't know if you know where that is, but anyway, the day we got to Chanute Air Force Base, Deb and I, just the two of us, they invited he and his wife and the family. That I think they had 4 kids. We all had dinner, and there was no invitation. It was, you're coming over. Okay, Chief. Yes, whatever you say, I'm going to do. And we went, and it was great because immediately we were part of that family. Immediately, I mean, within hours, Chief, we were part of that family. And I gathered a lot of times, particularly on social media again, that doesn't happen anymore, or not enough. And I'm not going to tell a chief how to be a chief, but consider that, especially as a new chief. And you don't have to be a chief. If you're a master sergeant, a tech sergeant right now listening to the program, you can do it too. Because I think, and we have, I guess we have a recruiting problem. I know the Army does, evidently. They're doing some weird stuff, I think. But I think what the youngsters need and want is that camaraderie, that family thing that at least I know I had, and I think you had for at least a part of your life, that's now not there anymore. We are family. I mean, when you think about it, and I do a lot often, we are the type of people that are willing to give our lives for each other. Where else do you find that? And I think if we're going to recruit people, and I think if we're going to retain them in particular, they have to understand that. They have to believe that. The chief will die for me. I think that's a huge thing. Now don't go out and do that. That's ridiculous. But and that's trust. I trust my chief enough that I know if I need a kidney and his is compliant with mine, or the same thing, I'll get it. But that, and again, I know it's not just the chiefs that do this, but as a chief, especially as a new chief, I think we need to do this. We need to start that so that we model it, because we all learn from models. Somebody referred to me as Bob Gaylor several years ago, and I said, no, I'm not. I'll never be Chief Gaylor, but he is my mentor, and I do a lot of things that he does because he taught me. So we become those people that that we watch see as models, as heroes. So I think it's time for us, the chiefs, to stand up and say, "Hey, let me gather my airmen, and not just airmen, NCOs, and let's be a family. Let me show them what family is like." Now and you're a dad, so sometimes you got to smack them upside the head, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, family means all those basic things, like keeping them accountable, right? A lot of supervisors want to jump on every sword these days. When you jump on a sword every time, the airman's never going to be accountable for any of their actions. Those simple little things. They need to be accountable for what they do. You need to hold them to that accountability, just like I would do, my son. Yeah, for whatever he would do that's wrong. Let's say said a swear word, and that's not appropriate in my household. Then I'd hold them accountable. If you're late for work, I got to hold you accountable. And we can't just keep letting things go. I think I recall studying, it seems like 100 years ago, or reading the book, and it said, high discipline equals high morale, because everybody knows that everybody's on the same level playing field. And so it's not that you're being a hard A or something like that. It's just you're being accountable for their actions. Yeah. And you as the chief have to be accountable for your actions as well, right? So and those actions aren't always negative, right? But if you don't get out from your desk, then you're going to be the chief that nobody knows. You're going to be the chief that nobody respects. Nobody's ever going to come to you when they have a real issue that you want them to come to you for. We say, hey, I have an open door policy, but if I don't know you, because I've never seen you, guess what door I'm never going to go to? The one that's open that you say is open, because it's really not.
Yeah. And you really can't expect them to come to you. There's still, I think, some kind of, and I hope it's respect, but maybe a little bit of fear I don't really want to go to the chief, man. You know, he or she could kill me. Well, that's not going to happen. But they have that a little bit, you know, whatever that. Let's say it's respect, that I don't really want to go in and talk to the chief, because you know he's not just one of the guys. Well, and it says, oh, I mentioned it in the book. Don't be one of the guys, but still, you got to be, like you've been saying, you have to understand who they are, and the only way you're going to do that is by being with them and listening, observing, and all of that kind of stuff. But all of this stuff, Chief, I think becomes our identity, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know what the rules are anymore, because you know I don't belong to Chief Scoops anymore. They don't invite me anymore because I'm too old, I guess. Uh, but I quit buying because I can't afford it. You guys making a lot more money than we are, believe it or not. But anyway, there were certain things that chiefs did not do in my day, and there were certain things that chiefs did do in my day, and that was our identity. I mean, I remember at Keesler Air Force Base at the club, there used to be a little room over to, as soon as you walked into the club, to the left there was a room, and I peeked in there because it was red. Everything on the walls and everything was red, but that was the chief's room, and you could not walk in there unless you were a chief, and I was a master sergeant at the time. But I always looked in and wondered, I wonder what happens back there, because there was this aura, you know, this identity in that came from that room, you know. And I never got to go in there because, you know, like PCS and everything. When I came back, and he was an MTI at USAFA with us. I can't think of his name right now, but he invited me to Keesler, and I went back and I was looking for the club that had been destroyed by the hurricane.
Yeah.
Because now it was my opportunity to go to that room, and it did not exist anymore. But anyway, and I think, again, Chief, and I hope I'm not wrong, this is what these youngsters want, and this is what they need. And a lot of times we don't know what we want. You know, at the 3-year point, I wanted out. Man, this sucked. You know, they wanted me to keep cutting my hair. Now, 50 years later, look at this. I do it now because I want to. But that's part of that belonging. Remember Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. That's part of those things that we as humans want and need, is to belong, which becomes our identity. So I think as a chief, we need to give them that. Why be an airman? 30 years. You could be making a lot more money somewhere else. You could have been doing that for 10 years ago, and you're not. Why?
Why? Two things. I always told myself, when I stop making a difference, I'll get out. Or if I stop having fun, I'll get out. And unlike, you know, somebody that gets out at 20 years, I'm still, you know, torn. Like I'm not, it hasn't settled with me, because I'm not necessarily ready to get out, you know, because I feel like I'm still making a difference. I'm definitely having fun doing what I'm doing. But you know, the rules are the rules. You get 30 and that's it. You know, unless you get into one of these positions that I'm not ready for.
Yeah. That, you know, I when I did retire, when they threw me out, because I did not retire, they threw me out. But I tried everything. I petitioned everybody. Secretary Rumsfeld was the Secretary of the Air Force. No, Defense. Yeah, I petitioned the president, everybody. Please let me stay longer. But nonetheless, I went to the academies, which gave me another 20 years, which was just as good in a way. But you're right. If you're enjoying what you're doing and you're being valuable, yeah, you want to keep going. And I think we ought to. We've changed a lot of rules in the last few years, let's change that one. Let's let Chiefs stay a little bit longer. That's what I'm petitioning for. So if it happens, then you heard it here first. You know, it's kind of like the radio.
But you know, you know, there's definitely been those points where I thought I was going to get out. Right. So first installation I went to was McCord. I had got one of those part-time jobs, and you know, looking back, if I would have got that part-time job at the time, I might not have stayed in. There was our first sergeant at the time. I was at the Air Force Academy. I don't know if you remember Eric McCullough. We called him Mac.
Oh, I can't remember the name.
And I had what I would consider the first. You know, obviously I've made mistakes along the way, but I would consider a major mistake in that, and I didn't do my course 14 or course 12 at the time, and I got my first, you know, the old EPRs from what they are now, first non-senior rated EPR, right out of the gate, first time as a master. and my superintendent called me up. I won't use their name, and my group commander, and they told me, Sergeant Pope, we're so disappointed in you. You're never going to make senior. You might as well just go ahead and get out of the Air Force. And I was like, dang, like it's that quick, you know? It's I mean, I got it done now, but yeah. And then Eric McCullough pulled me up and he said, "Hey man, can you sit in and do first sergeant duty for me for a couple weeks? I want to go on some leave." And what I didn't know was he was proud of me. He was doing exactly what we're talking about. He was finding what he saw as my passion, which was taking care of people. And then when I left the Air Force Academy, if it wasn't because of Mac, I wouldn't have been a first sergeant following that. And I had every intention when I went to be a first sergeant with, you know, hey, I'm not going to get promoted out of this. One, I'm going to another special duty. You know how tough those are as it is. But I made my mistake. I've already been told. I've been sold on the fact that I'm done, right? So I just went and took care of Airmen the best to my ability and loved every single bit of it. And there was some really hard times and struggles through that, you know, dealing with all the issues that people have, right? And then of course me and Gina had our little one, and she worked for a general, and heck, we would call each other up at the end of the day and just to see who was picking them up from daycare, because our jobs were just so, you know. Yeah. And guess what? I got promoted, and then got promoted again. So yeah. Never focused on promotion, so to speak. Obviously, we all want to get promoted. We want to be successful, and our airmen certainly do. But we have to get them to think in the manner of do things because you enjoy doing them. You know, you're not going to don't go out and do a volunteer opportunity because you want it to be on your EPR or your EPB. Go out because you're passionate about whatever it is you're volunteering to do. You know, most of the time when I would volunteer for stuff, I wouldn't put that stuff on my EPB. That's my stuff, you know, but it made me a better person, and that transcribed over into work. So yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know that we do it anymore, Chief, but we used to have what we call the whole person concept. That I think I grew up in that era. Most of my career was in that era, and that meant that we not only wanted to make good airmen, good technicians, but good people, good citizens, you know. And really, when you think about it, you know, 30 years really isn't a long time. If we've done this well, then we've created a good citizen, a good person like you and Gina retiring here shortly. You know, you're going to go out and continue to do great stuff because you're great people. And again, that goes back to our identity, you know. And I think we don't invest enough time thinking about that and then doing what it takes to get to that point. And again, modeling it as a chief, but also getting the youngsters to think about that. You know, time is going to fly. I mean, it's flown for, I don't even know, how old is your son?
He's 13 now. Yeah.
I mean, it was just yesterday. I saw it on Facebook. Hey, we had a little boy. It's like, wow, 13 years ago. But so time flies a lot faster than they think. We know because we've seen it, but they don't understand it yet. But yeah, I think maybe we should invest a little bit more time, more effort on thinking and talking about those things to our airmen. Because if we do have you know, hard. Well, no, not even in the recruiting process. You know, we're recruiters. Everybody's a recruiter. I just, I'll say, recruited a youngster for the academy this past summer because I went out to speak in Missouri somewhere, and he wanted to know about the academy. So I told him about the academy, and he's going to summer seminar this year, and you know, he's ready. So that's how we recruit people, by our own personal identities and our own personal stories, which are, for the most part, pretty darn good. You know, I know a lot of people that have retired early or gotten out early who say, man, I wish I'd stayed in. Well, it wasn't to be, but I understand.
Hey, I think there's a recruitment tool out there right now. If you retired, you can come back in with your certain age.
Really? You think?
Yeah. I don't know how many people are using it, but it's
Well,
definitely there.
I don't think they'd want me, Chief, because the knees make some noises out there, man, that you could hear for miles an hour. And, they'd know where I was, and, I'd be out. So, parting thoughts. Good life, I think. You said that it's a good life. When you retire in, what is it, November, you said something around that time? What are you going to say about the Air Force?
So if you don't know me, my dad was a 30-year chief as well. So the Air Force has been literally my whole life. It's not just hey, I came in and, I was 18 and did 30 years. This is literally all I know. That's why it's so scary leaving it, I think. But I'm never really going to leave it because I'm going to stay engaged with our airmen, just like you, maybe not in the same capacity that you did at the Air Force Academy, but definitely in some capacity. Yeah, I will have nothing but good things to say. I'll have my war stories, so to speak. But the airmen that are serving today, so when I leave the machine doesn't stop, right? While you're in the Air Force, there's a train and it's moving down the tracks. And if you let it go by you, you're going to let it go by you and you're going to miss a whole lot. There's a seat on that train and you got to get on it before it passes you up and get in your seat. But yeah, it's just been the most amazing experience, the most amazing time, not just helping people through their issues in life, but having people help me through my issues in life. And growing as a person just holistically. It's just made me who I am today, completely, in some fashion. Obviously I brought what I had brought, but again, I came from an Air Force family, so this is definitely, and I have airmen in my family still serving. I have a nephew who's a K9 handler currently in Korea, headed to England after there. I have a crew chief nephew who's out in California. They're all over the place, and they're doing amazing things, and we need them to, as our population group gets smaller and smaller of what's eligible to come into the service and technologies. Kids are not kids.
You need to reread that part.
Yeah, right. These airmen are so they're more smart than we were when we came in, for sure. They just have so much knowledge. The technology, it's just amazing. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do. And I just hope that they continue to be safe doing it.
Yep. And they will. Well, thanks again, Chief. The Chief James Pope. I don't know that I ever knew you. Well, I knew your name, but I've always called you either Sergeant or Chief. So anyway, Chief James Pope, thank you for all you've done. And Gina, we had some good times together out at the Air Force Academy. Thank you for your service, and all the best in whatever it is that you do, because you're going to excel whatever it is. And if you want to run for office, I'm going to vote for you.
Sounds good. And if you want to come out for my retirement, you're more than welcome to.
All right. Well, send me an invitation. You never know where I'm going to show up.
Right.
God bless you, brother. Thank you.
You too. Thanks.